Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Empower Her podcast. Life does not need to be hard. Life is hard when you don't set boundaries. Life is hard when you create rigid expectations of outcomes, okay? Life is hard when you don't listen to your gut and your intuition. We live in a world, well, those of us in the US or sort of in Western society, we are taught that in some way, shape, or form that life is really only worth living and the best things come to us when it's hard, when it's a struggle, right? We're told that we have to struggle. We have to kill ourselves to make money, right? You have to be burned out to rise on the corporate ladder. You have to be exhausted to be a mom. I don't know about you, but none of those things sound fun to me. And I grew up this way, right? I grew up this way that I thought that you needed to work your butt off, you needed to put in your hours, you need to do all the things to make money. For me, I was taught, and not directly taught, but indirectly taught by, my family's beliefs, and I'm half Hungarian, and Hungarians have a very lack mindset when it comes to money, obviously because they grew up in communism, they grew up in a lot of, lack times when they really didn't have anything, so that's still ingrained in a lot of people. But I grew up with this indirect thinking that money is hard to come by. And so because of that, I saved everything, which, as a teenager, I've been working since I was like 11 babysitting and then 16 at like a quote unquote real job. But I always saved my money, which again is not a bad thing. But when it came time to actually taking risks like on my business or doing things that were fun for me or that brought me joy or that were some sort of self-care, I found it very hard to do that. I found it very difficult. I didn't spend money on myself in that way, things that would make my life better or easier. And it really did hinder me for a long time. And another way that I felt this sort of lack mindset, or I felt like it was supposed to be hard, is that I was in a lot of relationships that just didn't serve me. I thought that it was hard to find a good man. I thought that it was hard to find someone who would be the kind of man that I wanted next to me. And that's why I settled for a lot of relationships that didn't work, because I thought, I'll just make him better. I'll train him. I'll level him up. I will help him through his emotional baggage, right? But I did a lot of therapy. I did a lot of mindset work. I did a lot of nervous system regulation, and I realized that life does not need to be hard. And guess what? Once I started letting go of this feeling that life needed to be hard, everything changed. Life got easier. I started manifesting things I've never manifested before. It's incredible the doors that it's opened. And society isn't built, again, to teach us that life is easy or that you can have things without struggling, right? And it's not to say that you shouldn't work hard or you shouldn't put in effort. You absolutely should. But there's a difference between working hard and putting in effort and getting to a point where you're burnt out, stressed out, and you're unhappy because you're putting so much time and energy into something that isn't giving you what you wanted, right? And society, again, is built to show us that life is hard. And, we can look at this from a cultural perspective. If we're looking at the boomers or the older generation, they did grow up in a time when life wasn't the best, right? So for me, it was like my grandparents' generation, my great-grandparents' generation. They grew up in a time when it was scarce, when there wasn't a lot. My grandparents were very penny pinchers, and not in a negative way, because they took trips and they had fun and they were very generous with their money. But my grandpa was extremely savvy with saving, writing everything down, looking at what the cheapest thing is that he could buy at which store. He did that. And, maybe it worked for them and it worked for their life, but that was also what we saw, right? And so obviously my parents saw that, and then we saw that, right? So it's these generational different ways of looking at things, generational views that are passed down, right? And I think a lot of millennials are changing the script on this. I mean, me as a coach, like, this is one of the main things I talk to my clients about, is that life doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't need to be hard to get a job or to feel happy or all of those things, but we have to reframe it, and we have to basically retrain our minds because we were not taught to feel this way, right? There's people who grew up in lower income families, right? And if you grew up lower income or you felt any sort of oppression, right, that's going to make you have a lack mindset. And that's totally normal that you feel that way, right? or having a scarcity mindset. I did not grow up in a low-income household, and yet there was still scarcity mindset, which I didn't even understand until I was well into my 20s, looking back on it, that there was scarcity mindset in my household, even though we were financially stable. A lot of times, especially if you're in the US, or, you have parents that are immigrants, for example. My mom is Hungarian and my mom's family is Hungarian. My dad's American and his side of the family. And they often have those different viewpoints and different point of views, especially if they came from somewhere. Hungary was under communist rule until quote unquote quite recently, right? My mom grew up in that time, and we have to understand where it comes from, because I think once we understand where that scarcity comes from, where that lack mindset comes from, where that feeling of it needing to be hard comes from, then we can reprogram. And that's what's key. And, not even to mention the fact, besides all these cultural aspects, is, the societal aspects of women making less money than men, women having to work harder for their jobs. I experienced this when I was in corporate. I remember that I felt like I had to do 5 times as much than my male colleagues who were in the exact same position as me, and they did not do as much as I did. I put in way more hours, I put in way more work, and I felt like they were getting promoted faster than I was. They got into their roles faster, and it was because I was doing things differently. It was probably because I was a woman to some degree. Even if it wasn't inherently sexist, it probably was because I had male managers for the most part. And so looking at that women as a whole make less money, and they do feel like they have to work hard, and not even to mention Black women who have to work so much harder, or feel like they have to work so much harder, even though they're statistically the most educated in the US. So there's so many different cultural and societal aspects that we're talking about when it comes to where this notion of it being hard comes from, and understanding it first off is really helpful, and then we can make those changes. Another thing that I don't think we talk about enough is we aren't taught to trust our gut, right? When we're children, think of yourself as a baby. When you're a baby, you cry when you're hungry, when you need your diaper change, when you're tired, right? Children, like little small kids, know when they need to sleep. They will show that they need to sleep, right? They're using their gut. They know how their body feels, how they feel, right? And then once we get to a point when we're in our teens and adults, because of schooling and society and just the way we're set up, we no longer trust our gut. We no longer listen to our inner self. It took me almost 32 years to get to the point where I can trust my gut now. But my gut has allowed me to make decisions that are actually right for me, because decisions that are right for me are typically going to be the decision that's going to be in the long term easier. And again, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying you don't have to work hard. It's just that it's going to be easier because it's going to be the right decision, rather than forcing something that isn't the right decision. Now, we could go into a tangent about human design, because y'all, if you follow me, I'm obsessed with human design, and that's something, understanding my human design has really helped me over the years to understand how I work, how I best make decisions, what is important to me. So that's been really helpful, but that's a whole different topic. We won't get into that today. If you want to hear more about that, let me know. We could do a whole episode on that. But that's definitely something that's helped me, and I definitely, recommend that for everyone. And I talked about this a lot. I worked in corporate, and I was in a managerial position. I worked my way up. I started as a copywriter, then became a project manager, then a team lead, then a manager. And I really worked my way up in those almost 7 years that I was there. But I was completely burned out and stressed out and overworked by the end. It was not healthy. I mean, physical ailments I've talked about before, all of those things. And I left corporate 2.5 years ago, and it took me almost until now to finally reprogram my brain so that I see life differently, so that I realize life doesn't have to be hard. I have weeks sometimes, I'm a business owner, I freelance, like I do things kind of on my own time now, and it took me a long time to get to a point where I didn't feel guilty anymore about doing something in the middle of the day. It doesn't mean I'm not working hard. I work totally different hours than I used to in a 9 to 5. I'm someone that works pretty much 24/7. Yes, on weekends I work less, but it's never that I don't do anything. I don't really go on vacation. Like, yes, I go on vacation, but I'm always working typically on vacation, even if I take a couple days off. And that's really not days off, because I'm always on social media posting, creating content, all of those things, thinking about new ideas. So it's a completely different way of life. But it took me so long to finally accept that, okay, yeah, maybe I can go meet a friend in the middle of the day for lunch, but that doesn't mean that I'm not working hard or putting in the effort. So it really is about reprogramming how you feel and looking at things in a more neutral way. I've been really trying to look at things neutrally, and rather than thinking of things as good and bad, because I think that can often cloud our judgment, but really looking at things as neutral. And just from a spiritual perspective, looking at things as if life is working in my favor. The universe, God, whatever you believe in. I personally am more spiritual. I'm not religious. I believe in the universe, but I believe I make my own decisions. But the universe is conspiring in my favor, right? I'm always trying to look at what is the best case scenario. So a little exercise you can do is just try to imagine the next time you're in a situation where you're spiraling, you're overworked, you're burnt out, right? You're stressed about something. Think, what is the best case scenario of this situation? Okay. Or what would you like that situation to look like? What would it look like? What would it feel like? And once you have that written down, try to think about, can you let go of your expectations and believe that that thing will happen, right? Can you let go of that? I work with a lot of clients. This is just an example. I work with a lot of clients who, as a career coach, who want to find new jobs. So a lot of times we're talking about what your dream job looks like, and we have a very specific definition of what that looks like. And obviously they're applying to roles, they're networking, we teach them all those things, but it can feel sometimes overwhelming. They get rejections, they're having interviews, they're applying, right? And then they often don't even start the thing because they're so stressed and it feels so hard. But it feels hard because they have a specific expectation about the outcome, and they're trying to control how the outcome is going to happen, right? So oftentimes then they don't even start what they're doing, or they feel burnt out, and that literally gets them nowhere. And this is exactly an example of it doesn't need to be that hard. Can you just talk about or create small attainable goals? So can you just search on LinkedIn for 20 minutes and see if you find any roles, right? Can you just apply to one job in under 20 minutes, right? Look at what those small steps are that you can take if something feels overwhelming and something feels like it's going to be so hard or so intense. And a lot of times what I've noticed with a lot of my clients and even with myself is this feeling of it needing to be hard comes down to worthiness. Do you believe you are worthy of good things? Do you believe you are worthy of things coming natural to you, right? It happens for other people. We see it all the time. We're like, oh, they have it so easy, or why does it come easy to them? And then we think, why can't it be for us? Well, why couldn't it be for you? You have to believe that it's possible. Look at all those people that are delusional, that we would call delusional, and all these amazing things happen to them. Yeah, because they're not caught up on what should happen or trying to control the outcome. They just believe in themselves, they feel worthy, and then those things will come easier to them, right? And again, doesn't mean we're not putting in the work. It just means that emotionally we're not putting those extreme expectations and pressure on ourselves, and the things that are actually meant for us are going to come for us, okay? And affirmations are a really great way to reprogram your brain and reprogram how you feel about these things. So I wanted to give you a couple of example affirmations you can use. Obviously, you can tailor these to your specific example. I would, if you're job searching, tailor it to job searching. If it's about getting a salary raise, whatever, finding a partner, whatever it is, tailor it to whatever it is that you actually want. But here are a couple of the affirmations. The first one is, the universe is working in my favor. Good one. Next one is, what is meant for me will find me at the right time. We're letting go of the process and we're just doing, and the outcome will come. And next one is, my goals and passions align with my work. Oftentimes things are hard because we're doing things that don't align with us, doesn't align with our passions and our goals. And you can edit these again how you see fit, and always write affirmations in the positive as if they've already happened. And, guilt often comes up. Guilt often comes up in a lot of these conversations because we have trouble letting go. I mentioned this before, and we compare ourselves to other people, right? We say, well, this shouldn't come easy to me because it doesn't come easy to other people, right? And then we feel guilty about it. That's another feeling that I find a lot of my clients feel as well in these situations, because we're always comparing ourselves to other people. We need to focus on ourselves. We are completely unique. We are completely different than anybody else. There are no two people that are alike. There are no two people who are on the exact same path, right? We need to let go of comparison, let go of perfectionism, let go of the expectations we put on ourselves on how the outcome is going to happen, how it's going to look, and instead create habits that support your beliefs, work on your mindset, create small attainable goals that are actually going to help you. I guarantee you it is possible for you to have absolutely everything that you've ever wanted. It is not as hard as you think, but you have to do the work, you have to believe, and you also have to not overwork yourself and do the most. You need to do the strategic things that are actually going to help you, okay? The question is, are you ready to do that? All right. I hope this episode was helpful. As always, I would really appreciate a 5-star review wherever you're listening to this. It really helps boost the podcast, and I would greatly appreciate it. I hope you all have an amazing week, and I'll catch you in the next episode.